A UMR research poll released today has shown massive opposition to Kiwisaver savings being invested in tobacco companies, fast food companies and businesses who dodge tax. Community campaign group Action Station crowd-funded to commission the research, which surveyed 750 New Zealanders in September, just weeks after Radio New Zealand first revealed many Kiwisaver members were unknowingly investing in companies making cluster bombs and anti-personnel mines. A short time ago, I spoke with Action Station National Director Marion Elliott, and I started by asking her about Kiwisaver investments in companies who dodge tax.
So the survey showed that 86% of the respondents to the survey disapproved of their savings being invested in companies that dodge tax here in New Zealand and abroad.
And when we talk about these tax dodging companies, who are we talking about here?
Well, that's not specified in the survey. So, the respondents are coming to their own conclusions, presumably about that. But we know that the coverage that we've seen in the media has been of the large multinationals who have been avoiding paying tax in New Zealand by diverting their profits offshore. There's been a good amount of coverage of that, so we could infer perhaps that those are the sorts of companies that people had in mind.
And what are they saying about investments in junk food and sugary drinks?
Well, I'll be honest, this one surprised me. It came out very strongly as well. 74% of the respondents disapproved of their Kiwisaver savings being invested in companies that produce junk food and sugary drinks. That's going to be, I think that's going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, because there are a lot of large multinational companies that own subsidiaries that are involved in the production of junk food and sugary drinks. So 74% of New Zealanders not happy with their savings being invested in those companies.
Also very strong feeling against investment in tobacco companies?
That's right. 81% of the respondents disapproved of their savings being invested in tobacco. So that's perhaps, for me anyway, less surprising, given what we know and have known for a long time now about the harmful effects of tobacco. But yes, very high levels of disapproval there.
And so what is the overall message from this survey?
Well, what I believe this is, New Zealanders making it very clear that they want their money invested in industries that are making things better, not those that are making it worse, and that really having their savings invested in unethical companies just isn't okay by them. Last
week, Vanguard, which is one of the world's biggest fund managers, actually announced a new Kiwisaver fund which excludes tobacco and weapons companies, the big weapons makers. But that, if it was listening to a survey like this, that only really goes part of the way. So do you imagine that there's going to be a lot more pressure from Kiwisavers for these big fund managers to look again at their other investments?
I think so. I don't think this is going to go away. I think that a lot of New Zealanders were shocked when they learnt what their savings had been invested in. And now that they know, I don't think New Zealanders are really going to be happy until they can be reassured that none of their savings are invested in industries that they find unethical. And as this research shows, New Zealanders have strong views about that.
You've got a petition calling for legislative change. Where is that at?
So that petition was actually delivered last week. It was delivered to James Shaw from the Green Party, who's been sort of actively following this issue up in Parliament, and he will now pass that petition through Parliament to a select committee, whichever committee the House decides is relevant. And so that was more than 16,000 New Zealanders calling for legislative reform. And the reason for that was that it's one thing to have, fund providers respond to pressure from users, but that can only happen when those users know what's going on. And it's a very high standard of responsibility for an ordinary New Zealander to be able to uncover and understand in detail exactly where their money might be invested. And what we know is that for many New Zealanders, there are certain standards that they think should not be negotiable. And certainly around the weapons, which is what that petition is specifically related to, raised very, very high levels of disapproval in New Zealand, saying that that just shouldn't be allowed at all.
And that's Action Station's Marianne Elliott.